text we have is not in historical sequencing. It was put together by committees after Muhammad's death, and they wrote down from memory what they remembered these surahs as being, and some of them had memorised them, right? And they were special because they carried the memory. And Ali was one of the closest because he had been with Muhammad when most of them were received. I mean, I wish we knew more about it. You know, did Muhammad stand up when he recited these things? Did he mumble sitting down? Did he, you know, etc.? I mean, I'd love more details, and I think Islamic scholars could find out that from what's called the hadith and so on. But from what we can tell, they were put into kind of, we don't know exactly the criteria by which they chose the order, although it seems to be they started with the largest ones. So they put them into surahs. Yeah, it was in size, right? So you had the biggest ones first, and then smaller and smaller at the end. Now that was a custom in the Hebrew tradition.
Okay.
In certain of the Hebrew scriptures, commentaries on the Torah were done in the same way. And what scholars think is that that's why the committee chose to do these texts. Because initially, Muhammad was arguing, well, I'm the new prophet of Judaism.
Yeah.
I'm the replacement following on from Moses, because he loved Moses and Abraham. And he wanted to be Jewish, effectively. And the original Qibla was facing Jerusalem.
Oh, wow.
You know, he thought he was going to be the Messiah of the Jews. The trouble was, they then rejected him and said, you're a false prophet. And they fought him in Medina, and you know, but I think, and then, you know, catastrophe happened, there was conflict, and the Battle of the Trench where lots of Jews were killed, and relations went downhill. But I think the structure of the Quran was partly set by that.
Right.
Anyway, what I'm doing, which is, I think, long overdue, I don't know why it should be me, little old me, you know, like, I mean, there are whole hundreds and thousands of professors of Islamic history who should have done this years ago. I don't know why they haven't. I'm putting the whole thing back into chronological sequence. So I've worked, you know, looking at research. People have been doing this. We kind of roughly know the order in which these surahs were received.
Right.
That sequence then, you know, has been worked out. And what I'm doing is I'm doing a commentary in that order, right? So the earliest surahs, which were given in Mecca when he was essentially a sort of night school religious studies teacher, receiving the word of God, those are very poetic, very beautiful verses. Very, very tolerant, very liberal, very interfaith. It's like, you know, very loving. As Mecca wears on, he gets a lot more opposition. People start criticising him, attacking him, spitting on his followers and stuff. And the verses become a bit more threatening and a bit more like, you're all going to go to hellfire, you know, unless you turn to the one God. And what's interesting is to therefore look at the Quran's evolution in terms of the history of ideas and the context. So I'm a historian of ideas, and that's what I'm doing.
And it would explain some of the...
It explains the tenor of the Quran and how it changes a bit. Because although I can accept, let's say I'm sitting with a total literalist, absolute purist traditionalist who would say, no, it all came, everything from God. Muhammad just got it and put it out into Arabic and didn't alter a thing. I would say the evidence is probably against that. There's what I call the refracting principle. I think this is working true of all prophets or seers or sages or druids. You can receive a divine inspiration or thought, but by the time it comes out of your mouth, it's been filtered through your cultural, linguistic, conceptual and psychological framework. Now that isn't to do what you know traditionalists accuse you of psychologizing.
Right.
It's to explain the packaging. You know, when you put a spoon into water, it bends the spoon. It's refraction. When you put a genius idea into the mind of a prophet, it's bent, and it comes out according to their. I think it's unavoidable. It comes out with the makeup. So John the Baptist was a bit ranty. It was his makeup, You know, he used to go down the Jordan and shout at you if you weren't, you know, squeaky clean. Whereas Plato, they're totally different. He got, I think, as many downloads from the divine as John the Baptist ever did, but he puts them into witty dialogue because he's an Athenian intellectual, and that's how they worked. You know, so the Quran is just full of incredible stories, annunciations. It often rehearses and retells stories from what we call the Bible. One interesting question that I've engaged in is, how did these stories get into the Quran? How does Muhammad know the Exodus story? How does he know about Benjamin or Jacob or Yusuf or, you know, etc.? Did he, I mean, the consensus is he wasn't literate. He never sat down and read the Jewish scriptures. But he probably had an extremely good memory, and he absorbed orally from the trade routes that he frequented all the way up to Damascus, and probably to Hira in the neighbouring Arab kingdom of the Lakhmids, on the way to the Sasanian Persian Empire, where he would have mingled with Manichaeans, Zoroastrians, Jews, Christians, etc. And you can see the mélange in the Quran. So I think this is his refracting water, if you want. And also the stories sometimes differ from the ones we have, because he's very clear that he's bringing the message through Ishmael, who's the eldest son of Abraham, whereas the Jews' message came through Isaac, you know, and he prioritises the Ishmaeli tradition, which he believes he's a descendant of.
Okay.
You know, so it's huge. I mean, it's taken me many years of study, and I can't pretend it's going to be the definitive commentary chronologically of the Quran, but I hope you'll read it one day. It's on a talking book. You can listen to it on the Green University.
Oh yeah.
You know, and I hope students will do that.
Definitely.
So there we are. I haven't given you a little story. I've told you the context of what I'm doing.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
Excellent. Now, right, my turn to ask you another question.
Yes.
Okay. Well, so, I mean, you're going to be gone from here soon, aren't you?
Yeah.
You're leaving the museum and the muses. I mean, I hope you've enjoyed your time here. I mean, what have you enjoyed the most? Let's say, you know, what have you found interesting about being here?
So, what have I found the most interesting? So I have I had an interest in Buddhism and shamanism and Sufism.
Right.
Before, but mild. Like I mean, Buddhism I went a bit deeper into, and that was kind of the path that I was on. But what I appreciate most is the breadth of connecting everything. And to be in a place where, so I'll speak to my friends and talk about 9/11 and talk about what we'd call as conspiracies, and they would assume that I'm stupid. Or we talk about religion and they would assume that I'm stupid. If I say, you know, God, right, and I speak about God to them, or I talk about synchronicities, because I do that all the time, and no one's ever gone, that's intelligent, that's actually smart, it's wisdom.
Right.
And I've tried to put it across to people, you know, if you're looking at science, why don't you look at the connections between different things? But I never really I found little bits of it through the internet, of people doing like maths and Zen, but I never could see it like a map, like you're doing, literally with a periodic table, or connecting wisdom in all of the different aspects of it, that's something that it had never been so clear before. And all the things that I like poetry and music and art and films and meditation and food and religion, in one place. It's not really, I mean, I haven't really found anything like that before. I don't know if it exists that much in other places.
I don't know, and it should be, shouldn't it? I mean, it should be. Every village should have a sort of Sufi, Druid
thing.
Spiritual retreat centre full of Neoplatonic Kabbalists.
But it's like once you step over into it, the whole of the world goes. I mean, I already experienced that from learning, like Buddhist, the scientific, proven bits of Buddhism. I was like, reading books about science and Buddhism.
Right.
Which helped me realise how much of an academic discipline it is, religion, rather than this like wishy-washy woo-woo thing. I don't understand how now people have forgotten that. I was just thinking when you were reading the Quran and the Bible, that, you know, our calendar's based on Jesus, but no one's read the Bible. And we have all these opinions about the Bible and the Quran, and
yeah, people don't
no
read
one's ever read them. Like, I think just you should have to read all of them.
Well, yeah. When I was an RE teacher, I sort of, you know, made the kids doing GCSE actually read one gospel.
Yeah.
And there were grumbles. You know.
They don't understand because that's the basis of kind of that's our story.
Of Western civilization.
Yeah.
And if we don't read our stories, we'll lose them.
And to be Islamophobic, this Islamophobia, it's like, oh well, they're really violent. Well, let's read it then and have a discourse about it. I don't understand why people. It's not intelligent to not actually do the work and just like say things. So it's nice to be in a place where I'll take a lot from that. In that I'll put a lot more effort into the actual learning. And putting real effort into, just like you put effort into meditation, which I think you should do.
Sure.
You should put effort into, if you're going to have opinions, make sure that they're founded on things that you know about.
Sure.
You can't just go through life with it's like we've lost the essence of things.
Well, we've lost the ability to actually study, and partly the internet's to blame, because people get knowledge at a click, but they don't have to work.
Well, I was going to ask you about that.
Okay, well I won't say anything.
Okay.
Well, it's your question, isn't it?
So so my question is like, in this technological time, what's your enlightened viewpoint on it, on what it's done to our society for the good, for the bad?
Well, I think you know, we're in the middle of a sort of struggle between the good and the bad, as Zoroaster pointed out years ago. He was one of the sources of the Sun Moon Brotherhood. I think that we're wobbling. Ego, you know, the old maths, the kind of me, wants to take ideas and inventions like the internet and misuse them for personal ego and gain. And that's what Johnson and Dominic Cummings and Cambridge Analytica do. They're now gaming whole populations to steal democracy and give them fake democracy. They give them populism, Brexitism, and militarism, you know, and profit for the supergiants, the tech wizards sitting over in, you know, California or whatever. Okay, so that's one route we can go down. Yeah. This invention can be in the hands of techno wizards who just game it for their own advantage, whilst the world burns. The Amazon forests burn, Australia burns. We don't attend to global warming issues. We just go on fighting our wars, and meanwhile they're on the Virgin Islands or Jersey and just sitting on piles of money, you know. Well, that's okay. So the key text to read is Surveillance Capitalism by Shoshana Zuboff, which I read, 500-page book. Definitely worth a read. And she's put that whole thing into a sort of theoretical framework. She's a kind of Marxist, post-Marxist intellectual historian of the impact of the digital age on economics. And it's interesting what she's reading, and on their extreme wing you have people that she's interviewed and talked to, because she based the book on interviews with 400 geek scientists who are inventing this stuff.
Right.
They're trying to digitize every aspect of human reality. So you can buy clothes that are digitized, which as you walk will send messages, beeps up to some server that indicate that maybe you've got a dodgy left hip, and maybe you ought to get an email tonight. There's a pharmaceutical new product on the market for dodgy left hips, and so they'll send you that because the thing bleeped, and so you get that. And if you click on that and buy one, then the clothes manufacturer gets a cut.
Yeah, they selling
right?
data.
So they're selling data. They're also doing that with beds. So if you're a troubled sleeper, you sleep at night the wrong way, then the mattress is sending messages to the central server, and it's recalibrating and adjusting the way it sits in the bed, and it's sending the data. And if you've got a sort of dodgy, twisted spine, it'll again send you a doctor's appointment or something. So, and then the whole thing is with the Google glasses. So you can be totally wired in all the time. I can be watching Google here, and I can click on who is this strange woman or whatever. And we enter this bizarre, geek-obsessed world where capitalism is the driver. Now, and it has no conscience, because this is all done through robotized systems that don't care about. Good Samaritan with his Google glasses would not. Okay, click, send an ambulance, but it takes out the human-heartedness of life. I think that life is not just a random collection of dots having a digital manifestation. I think the human-heartedness, the soul element of humans, is what makes our life so important, and it's precisely culture, the arts, aesthetics, beauty, love, magic. Now, machines can't replicate that.
No.
They can fake it. And I don't want to live in a dystopian world where robots decide that this or that country should leave or not this European Union project. That was a heart project, the European Union.
Yeah.
And our robotized, digitized, psychic soldiers like Steve Bannon, deliberately gamed the system in the interests of military capitalism, that Britain would leave the European Union, which is a peace project. And I find that a misuse of these things.
I have a question. Can I ask a question?
Okay. Sure.
If there's a God and there's a divine move into love, is the making, because if we are little pieces of God, is the making of the technology part of the holy plan?
I think it is, as long as we use it properly. I mean, it all comes from numbers, which are sacred in my religious maths book. It comes from the sacred ordering of being, which Pythagoras and the Enneagram and Iamblichus and all the great, and Euclid and Newton and Kepler and Leibniz and all these, and Einstein in his own way, have all known there's something in the world that's harmonious and beautiful, and math shows that. And digital, knowledge, von Neumann and the great founders of the computer age, and Alan Turing was another. They've made our digital age possible, and they were great visionaries. What I think we can do now is join up the dots and make that beauty manifest. And to me, peace has to be essential to that beauty. I don't think we can have beauty on this planet in the midst of war, meltdown, global warming, and vast movements of refugees that are homeless because their homes are being bombed, or people that are made refugees because their cities are being sold to the oligarchs, like it's happening in Beirut or in London. No, I mean, everybody's ontologically equal, the peasants and the lords.
Yeah.
And they all deserve a beautiful home, a beautiful life, and beauty in their lives. Whereas at the moment, the Etonians, who control the planet, want to preserve that for the 0.1%. So I want to just add one thing, the politics of this, the economics. I noticed Biden is now proposing new legislation to crack down all the tax havens of the super billionaire tech giants like Amazon and
Twitter.
Facebook and all that lot, Google, you know. Because what they're doing is they're gaming the system by parking their money in places like the Virgin Islands.
Or Dublin. They're in Dublin.
Or Dublin, or wherever, yeah. And so Biden has proposed a revolutionary clampdown on them all, and it would bring in billions of revenue to every country, not just America.
Yeah.
And even in Britain, people are saying we've got to do this.
Yeah.
Because that's where all the money's going.
It's completely where all the money's going.
And so, you know, a sort of tax on internet firms and things.
Great.
I actually proposed back in 2011, I wrote to the then Chancellor and suggested, because Britain was talking about austerity, you know, it was the Tory government, Lib Dems coalition, they were wondering how to pay off, because Labour, bless them, we love Labour, but they'd sort of given all the money away, there was nothing left.
To say about that though.
Okay,
Yeah.
so the Tories were saying, well, we have to do austerity, and I said, put a penny tax on each email sent,
Okay, yeah.
and it would raise billions, and that's the solving of the problem.
Well, that's what's.
And they're now suggesting this, you see.
That's what started the revolution in Lebanon. So they were going to charge for WhatsApp. So people went on the streets and were like, you can shove that
Right.
somewhere else.
Oh, that's interesting.
And
That was
it
what
started
actually
the
got
revolution.
people out.
Yeah, the first thing. And also the austerity thing, I just watched this video about that. So this is the worst recession we've ever felt, the COVID stuff. It's like 3 times as bad as 2008. And they've said we've borrowed so much money, it's going to be really bad, it's going to be so bad, we're going to have to do all these things. And
austerity forever.
And what this guy said, who is the Andy Verity, is the like BBC economics guy, he's like 92% of the money that they borrowed from themselves, from the government. So the government, the what's it called, the Church of England, the Bank of England.
Yeah.
Prints money.
Yeah.
The government buys the money from their own people. So they're doing a loan from themselves. So what he's saying is it's actually completely absurd that they ever did austerity. Because it's not like when you take a loan out on a mortgage, where they'll come and repossess your house if you don't pay it.
Because
you own,
yeah.
And they're just printing money, it's from nothing. And it's quite actually a good way. There's no hyperinflation. It's actually doing an alright job that. It's a really fine thing to do at the moment. And they did it before.
Yeah.
Why didn't they blamed everyone for austerity? So well, we have got to do this. And what they did was they destroyed the entire social infrastructure for
all
10
the progress
years.
that socialism had created.
For
they
no reason. For absolutely no reason. £92 billion or something and all they needed back then was $3 billion that they said that they were in debt.
Why they did it, I mean, with hindsight, I mean, nasty Etonian Tories just want to smash the socialists.
Want to destroy everyone.
And they don't like the idea of equality. In fact, they oppose it vehemently, and therefore it was a symbolic attack.
Yeah.
You know.
But people died from austerity.
Yeah,
They've done
people
like
die
150,000 people died because of austerity. There's murder. It's like cold.
Yeah, but because it's political.
Yeah.
And it's done through Parliament and it's legal, you know, and because all this has gone in the context of an extreme propaganda attack by the extreme right.
Yeah.
Steve Bannon, Farage, you know, they're all following Ayn Rand, who was an extreme right ranter who believes in selfishness is the only way to get progress. My individualism and my ego and what I want, and sod you, I don't care about society, there's no such thing as society. Those people have been sitting on a barrage of propaganda against the left, which they hurled at Jeremy Corbyn, they hurled at the Labour Party, they accused them of anti-Semitism, and they invented this stuff.
I know.
You know, I mean, the Labour Party is no more anti-Semitic than the Conservative Party.
The Islamophobia in the
Tory Party is
ridiculous.
Just quite. But of course,
anti-racist, the Labour Party.
Well, I know, and that's the whole point of them. But that wasn't told to the masses because the thing is, it's the rich, the super rich plutocrats who print the mass media, the Telegraph, and all the other papers,
Murdoch,
which feed the minds of these people. Murdoch is a rabid anti-socialist, fanatic, paranoid, you know.
I hate it.
he's limited in intellect and limited in moral intelligence, I would say. Going back to the Enneagram, you can map different people at different points, and some have positive qualities and some have negative qualities.
Yeah.
They call them vices and virtues.
Right.
So that's what we're facing. Okay, my turn to ask you, I think, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Well, this is interesting. So we just did a past life regression, didn't we?
You did.
And it's something you thought about, and you quite you believe in reincarnation and stuff. What did you find it interesting? Do you think it's like why don't people talk about past life stuff? Does it shed light on people's lives now? Do you think? Could it be a useful tool?
I think it's definitely a useful tool. I think.
Because you've been reading Plato as well. He talks about this, doesn't he?
But I think that the lack of having something beyond just our insular lives is what's the problem with the world. You can't. I have friends who say, "Well, I'm only here for 70 years. Why do I really care? Why do I need to put things in the bin? Why do I need to turn the lights off? Why do I need to do any of this stuff? Even the tiny minute details. Why do I care?" And I think if you had this idea of deep time, of and you get it from reading history, you get it from educating yourself about realising that 1,000 years ago they still had the same mind as we did today. They're questioning the same things. We haven't really evolved in 40,000 years, our brain capacity that much.
Yeah.
And that change, that would open up the understanding of what life is and what your life is, and make it necessary to care for the future. If your soul has been around and will be around, you want to look after it, and that could then spread out to everyone else's souls, if you have compassion. But I think it really, to feel it and experience it, either you have a near-death experience, or you have some illness or something that shocks you back into realising that death is a thing, and that's okay, and it doesn't end there, and it will keep going. But this past life thing was really nice to connect to whatever it was. I think you get to go. It's also it could be an act of imagination, which I don't think is a bad thing at all. I think it's medicine, but it could have been where my soul was, and
a few hundred years ago.
Yeah. And it reduces the like all of this stuff. It takes the edge off your own life, I think, because you realise it's all much more fluid than you think it is. There's not these harsh boundaries between life and death. It's much more soft than that, and it's like a flow, and you'll learn things. And I was quite happy back then. In that life, I'm quite happy in this life. So maybe I've got some good karma, and I'll just keep getting better.
Well, hopefully, and we can hopefully give it away by our working together and talking and sharing and stuff. Just a comment on what you said. I just want to pick up one thing.
Okay.
It's not a question; it's a comment.
Yeah.
I mean, I do want to think that what you said is incredibly important. That I think it is part of the instrumentarian power, to use Shoshana Zuboff's phrase, and military capitalism, and actually authoritarian military totalitarianism. We've got Chinese military, sort of clamp down on freedom of thought by using big tech. I think it's essential for their interests that people do not discover about life after death, that people think they are just material machines
an atom.
that have needs that can be satisfied economically.
Yeah.
If we realise we're all infinite souls, we've all had hundreds and thousands of previous lives and we're going to have in the future, we would become much more caring and much more humble, much more compassionate, much more visionary, and we would solve the problems of this planet quite quickly, in my belief. We would stop killing each other, because what's the rush? We're all going to die.
Yeah.
And I might meet you in some future life and you'll kill me. I mean, what's the point? You know, let's love each other instead, as Christ said.
Well, this is the thing of like this connected to the technology thing with. So my sister's 18 and her generation is like specifically, I think, they don't even have. I think when I was younger, I had existential crises and like questioning everything from quite a young age.
Yeah.
I don't even know if they have.
They don't even go through that.
They don't even have the capacity for that because their brains have been so connected to phones. And I hope I'm wrong, but they've been told that they're so much more materialist than I ever was, and I'm only 7 years older than her. But at least I had a period of time in my life where I didn't have a telephone until I was 13, and the internet wasn't really a big thing.
Right.
Yeah, but she was born on it,
and she couldn't imagine a world without.
No, and they had too much information in their brains from such a young age, and they all are so perfect looking from the age of about 13. I don't know.
The right clothes,
just
the right
makeup
look.
and hair and their role models aren't real. Their role models are people who have completely changed their face.
Sort of models on pictures and stuff.
Yeah, Instagram influencers are not real. They also spend like thousands of pounds on plastic surgery, clothes, your personal trainer, your diet. It's not a normal thing to have those as your idols. We used to have like intellectual idols. Maybe you'd have a favourite poet or your favourite.
Yeah, when I was a kid,
actress
that's what we did. Yeah.
And now it's like completely no essence, and that's not. This is like a complete like generalisation and black and white, and it's less black and white than that. There are good people on the internet, but it is harmful, and I'm kind of afraid that they don't have a sense of self that they could even try and lose. Do you know? Like they don't have any.
Well, it is now a recognised mental illness. You know, internet addiction. I mean, there are.
It's the worst.
You know, it's a thing.
Yeah.
And some people stay in their room on the internet. I mean, having said which, I mean, I use the internet as a teacher. I use it for research. I use it for bibliographical references.
Travelling around.
I used it in my PhD. It's a really amazing tool. And for me, I can visit the collections of the Hebrew University in Jerusalem or the British Library. I can look up who's done what PhDs in the last 100 years. I mean, if you use it wisely, it's an amazing tool. But we're not necessarily teaching those skills. I mean, that's what good schools do. They teach thinking skills and also research skills. And that's what they should do at sixth form and university level.
And more should be built into, ethics should be built into the internet. You can't have something that powerful without any ethical.
Well, obviously, there should be, yeah. And that's why, I mean, we've been living in the equivalent of the Wild West, where there's just gunslingers and no law. And that's why Biden is saying, no, we've got to tax these people. They've been getting away with literally murder.
For years.
Because what Facebook was doing with Cambridge Analytica, when you get dark forces like Cambridge Analytica, who are psyops specialists, they're spreading memes of hatred, which destabilise entire countries. And we saw the consequences with the Trump attack on the Capitol. Trump was a master of marshalling these dark forces of hatred through the internet. QAnon and demonising liberals, demonising progressives, demonising intellectuals. One of the things that annoyed me most as coordinator of the World Intellectual Forum here in Europe is the demonisation of intellectuals that the internet does. It dumbs everything down to two options, like or dislike. And life is much more nuanced. It's a rainbow world we live in, hence my scarf. And that's true thinking ability.